All right, let's get into it. Today, we're diving deep into the blueprint for trust in one of the fastest growing parts of global finance. This is all about the AAOIFI Shari'ah Governance Framework. You know, the Islamic finance industry has just exploded. It's really seen this incredible growth, expanding all over the world and pulling in everyone from individual investors to massive corporations. It's a real powerhouse in the market today. But here's the thing, with that kind of crazy growth comes risk, right? So the big question is, how do we make sure these financial institutions are actually sticking to the Sharia principles they were built on? How do we protect the integrity of the whole system? Okay, so let's dig into that. To really get why this framework is so important, you first have to understand the specific problem it was designed to solve. And that problem has a name: Sharia non-compliance risk. Now, this isn't just some small technical issue. We're talking about a risk that can lead to huge financial losses, legal nightmares, and maybe worst of all, a total collapse of public trust. It's the one thing that could seriously undermine the entire industry. So how does AOFI's framework actually deal with this? Well, let's break down the blueprint, starting from the outside in with the foundation. On the outside, you've got two main players setting the scene. First, there are the regulatory authorities. These are the national watchdogs, making sure every institution has a solid governance system. Then, the framework suggests having a central Sharia board to make sure the rules are consistent across the entire country, so everyone's playing by the same playbook. Okay, so that's the external piece. But what's really crucial is how this structure is built inside an institution. The whole thing rests on 4 pillars that are absolutely mandatory. And here they are. Think of these 4 pillars as a brilliant system of checks and balances. You've got the ultimate authority, the day-to-day monitors, the internal inspectors, and finally, the independent outside verifiers. Let's quickly touch on what each one does. First up, you have the Sharia Supervisory Board, or the SSB. This is the top dog, the highest internal authority on all things Sharia. It's made up of independent expert scholars, and whatever they decide goes. Their rulings are final. Next, you've got the Sharia compliance function. So if the SSB makes the rules, this is the team that makes sure they're actually being followed, day in and day out. They're the boots on the ground watching every transaction to make sure it's all aligned. Our third pillar is the internal Sharia audit. So how do you know if the compliance team is even doing a good job? Well, that's what these guys are for. They're the internal check on the entire system, making sure the controls are actually working and reporting their findings straight to the top. And finally, we have the external Sharia audit. This is the ultimate stamp of approval. A completely independent outside party comes in and audits the institution's compliance. This gives everyone, customers, investors, you name it, total confidence that things are being done by the book. Okay, so we have these 4 amazing pillars in place, but that brings up a pretty important question. Who's actually responsible for making this whole thing work? Who runs the show? That's where leadership and accountability come into play. And the framework is crystal clear about this. It draws a very sharp line between 2 roles. You have the board of directors, or those charged with governance, and their job is oversight. They set the big picture strategy. Then you have senior management, and their job is implementation. They're the ones in the trenches, making it happen every day. Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds incredibly rigid, but one of the biggest strengths of this blueprint is that it's not a one-size-fits-all model. It's actually designed to be flexible for the real world. And it does this through something called the principle of proportionality. It's a fancy term, but it's a simple idea. The framework can be scaled up or down. I mean, what a massive global bank needs is going to be completely different from what a small fintech startup needs, right? This makes the whole standard practical and effective for everybody. And because it's so adaptable, this framework can be used across the entire Islamic finance ecosystem. We're not just talking about banks. It applies to TAKAFUL, that's Islamic insurance, capital markets, microfinance, and even all the cutting-edge fintech platforms popping up. It really covers the whole shebang. So as we start to wrap this up, it's pretty clear that this framework is so much more than just a boring old checklist or another set of rules to follow. At its very heart, it's a complete system built for one critical purpose: to build and, maybe more importantly, to maintain integrity and public trust. That's the whole point. And honestly, nothing says it better than Principle 14 of the standard itself. It's all about transparency. That's the end game. It's about making sure everyone, from the smallest customer to the biggest shareholder, can feel confident in how the institution is being run. Which leaves us with one final thought to chew on.
This framework is a fantastic foundation for today, but we all know finance never stands still. So the really big question for the future is, how will this governance model evolve to handle new challenges like artificial intelligence and the explosion of global fintech? That for sure is the conversation for tomorrow.